Space Shuttle Discovery is poised for launch. West Germany assesses the damage done by a highly placed East German spy. 18 more leading dissidents rounded up in South Africa. Good morning, this is Bill Whitney with the CBS World News Roundup. NASA says the countdown is going smoothly. The weather seems to be no problem. So if all continues to go well, Space Shuttle Discovery will blast off from Cape Canaveral within the hour. 5 astronauts aboard for a mission that will test the capabilities of them and their equipment. Bruce Hall reports.
It will be a daring salvage mission with 2 spacewalking astronauts trying to hotwire a dormant communications satellite. The electrical system aboard the $85 million Syncom satellite failed when it was deployed in April. Shortly after it was launched, the astronauts aboard the shuttle then tried to start it with an improvised flyswatter device. The flyswatter worked, but the power did not come on. On this rescue attempt, astronaut Bill Fisher will try to rewire the electrical system so the satellite can be started and controlled from the ground. Even if the rewiring works, the chances are only 50-50 that the frozen satellite can be thawed out and brought back to life. The main business today on the first day of the mission will be the launching of a commercial communications satellite. It will be the first of 3 satellites to be deployed on this mission. Also, the shuttle's 3 main engines have been fitted with improved sensors as a means of avoiding the type of problems that the shuttle Challenger had last month when one engine was shut down by a computer after a sensor indicated an engine pump was overheating. Bruce Hall, CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center.
I'm Michael Weinfeld, and right now 5 astronauts are strapped into the cockpit of the Discovery, waiting to be launched into space. Liftoff was scheduled for less than 3 minutes from now, but there's been a delay. Keeping an eye on the countdown and the delays at Cape Canaveral is the AP's Dick Giuliano.
Very fast developing storms.
Good morning, everybody, from the Kennedy Space Center. In the background, you hear Hugh Harris, the voice of launch control.
Through a thundercloud or any cloud that has the potential of lightning.
There is a thundercloud that is hanging over launch pad 39A.
Return to the launch site, to the landing strip here at the Kennedy Space Center, if that should be necessary.
We are at 9 minutes and holding here at the Kennedy Space Center. Discovery is poised on the launch pad, but right now it's not going anywhere. Launch was scheduled for 8:38 a.m., just a couple of minutes from now, but the thunderstorm cloud is a problem.
Quite a lot of cloud cover at the present time. Launch Director Bob Seek saying we're just going to have to wait it out, and we sit here at T-minus 9 minute and holding. This should not be a serious problem as far as any of the systems on board are concerned because of the short duration of the window today, which extends till 9:12. And we have raised a lightning warning for lightning within 5 miles that had previously been given. However, we continue to hold for the weather at the T-minus 9 minute point. This is shuttle launch control.
There's a good reason why NASA would not launch this ship in a thunderstorm. In the event that there was an emergency during ascent, the space shuttle would have to abort or return to launch site, and they don't want to come in during a heavy cloud cover or during a rainstorm. Also, rain could conceivably damage the tiles which cover the orbiter. This space shuttle mission is the 20th in the program, and if it does get off the ground this morning, it will be the 6th flight in space for Discovery. It is primarily a salvage mission. The crew is to rendezvous with a Syncom satellite that is lifeless in orbit. It has no power. It was launched by a space shuttle back in April, but it never got power turned on. The crew at the time had tried to get it working by fashioning a flyswatter type device. They used some plastic notebook covers, and they did make contact with the switch on that satellite, but it just never did work. Now, the scenario for this mission calls for Discovery to pull up alongside that fully fueled but lifeless 15,000-pound satellite. 2 spacewalking astronauts, using Discovery's robot arm, will capture the craft. They'll pull it into the cargo bay, hopefully repair it, and then return it to space. Now, waiting along with us here at the Kennedy Space Center are a good deal of tourists. This being a Saturday launch, a lot of people are in town here along what they call Florida's Space Coast. Interstate Route 1 parallels the Kennedy Space Center.
Control at T-minus 9 minutes and holding. The entire crew of the firing room here glancing anxiously towards the window to see what the clouds are doing. We're continuing to hold in hopes that the clouds in the area will be going away. But at this point, we're in a very stable position at the T-minus 9 minute point.
Again, that's Hugh Harris, the voice of launch control. He hopes that the clouds move out of the way, but I can tell you from my vantage point, one thundercloud has already passed over Launch Pad 39A, but there's another one right behind it. So we are still in a weather hold here at T-minus 9 minutes. 5 men are on the flight deck of Discovery. The commander is Joe Engel of Chapman, Kansas. He is a decorated combat pilot who commanded the second test of the shuttle Columbia 4 years ago. Richard Covey is the pilot. He's making his first space shuttle flight. The mission specialists are James Van Hoften, also Bill Fisher, and Mike Lounge. Bill Fisher is a doctor. He's a surgeon. His specialty is emergency medicine. And his wife is Anna Fisher. She's an astronaut. She was aboard Discovery last November. Van Hoften is a big man. He's 6'4", he weighs 200 pounds, and that's why they call him Ox. It will be Ox Van Hoften and Fish Fisher, who will be the spacewalkers during this flight. They'll put on those 265-pound spacesuits, venture outside Discovery into the cargo bay. Van Hoften will be secured to the end of the robot arm. He'll have his feet in those foot restraints on the end of the robot arm. Fisher will stand on the side of the Discovery, also in foot restraints. This, of course, is for the satellite rescue attempt that will occur later on next week during this 8-day mission. Discovery, if all goes well, Discovery will pull up alongside the dead Syncom satellite. Mike Lounge, running the robot arm, will manipulate the device and move Van Hoften, who's at the end of the robot arm, out toward the satellite. And then in a rather daring move, Ox is going to stop that satellite with his hands, his gloved hands. He'll stop it from spinning. It's spinning at about 2 revolutions per minute. He'll then affix a grappling device to it. He'll move it over to the cargo bay, and he'll hand it over to Bill Fisher. And Fisher is a surgeon, as I mentioned earlier. And it is a delicate operation he'll have up there. He's going to modify that satellite. He'll make some changes in it, bypass certain power switches so that it can be commanded from the ground. Mike Lounge, as I mentioned, who'll be running the robot arm, who rounds out the crew. This is his first flight into space. He's an avid jogger, a chess player, and he rounds out the crew. The real veteran, of course, is the commander, Joe Engel.
This is launch control at T-minus 9 minutes and holding. Continuing to hold for weather here at the Kennedy Space Center. While on the pad, everything is in readiness for the launch of the 51I mission.
Everything's ready except Mother Nature.
The clouds in the area, which are giving us the problem, appear to be moving much more slowly than they originally had been moving. And all we can do at the present time is stand by. The window...
So, Dick, we're continuing at T-minus 9 minutes and holding, and some weather problems are forcing our delays. And AP Network News will resume its live coverage once the countdown resumes, or if there's a decision to scrap the launch. This has been a live special report from AP Network News. I'm Michael Weinfeld, and this is the AP Radio Network.
CBS News. This is Rob Armstrong.
The weather is too dynamic to call, and we will not be able to pick up the countdown. We will go through a recycle and try again tomorrow morning.
The voice of Shuttle Launch Control making the announcement that the weather scrubbed this morning's launch of the Space Shuttle Discovery. The story from Bruce Hall.
A quick developing thunderstorm rolled over the launch pad this morning, just as NASA was trying to send the Discovery into orbit, forcing a one-day postponement. The small but intense storm first held up the countdown at the 9-minute mark, but officials were confident the storm would pass by. But the storm remained throughout the 34-minute launch window, dissipating only minutes after officials reluctantly announced the postponement. Another attempt will be made to launch at 7:57 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. NASA guidelines do not allow for a launch in the rain because the raindrops can damage the shuttle's fragile heat-resistant tiles. And clouds can block the astronauts' view of the runway in case of an emergency landing here at the Kennedy Space Center. Once the astronauts do get off, it will be a daring salvage mission with spacewalking astronauts trying to hotwire a dormant communications satellite. The electrical system aboard the $85 million Syncom satellite failed when it was deployed in April. Bruce Hall, CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center.
CBS News, this is Rob Armstrong. For the second morning in a row, everything is in readiness for the launch of the Space Shuttle Discovery, set for a little less than an hour from now. And for the second morning in a row, the most unpredictable of the variables is the weather. The latest from Frank Motek of CBS radio affiliate WINZ at the Kennedy Space Center.
The Space Shuttle's hatch has been sealed, and the 5 astronauts inside the Discovery are again checking all vital systems in preparation for launch. The shuttle's trip into space yesterday was spoiled because fast-developing thunderstorms appeared over the Space Center at launch time. This morning, distant lightning is visible from the Space Center. Forecasters say the scattered thunderstorms are moving away from the launch area. NASA spokesman George Diller says mission directors are cautiously optimistic about the weather conditions today.
The latest forecast seems to be somewhat encouraging, although basically we're in the same atmospheric scenario that we were yesterday, and as the sun comes up and it gets warmer, we'll have to watch carefully, and again, we'll probably be making decisions, as we get into the latter part of the count.
The countdown proceeded smoothly, and so far it's all systems go for blastoff. Frank Motek for CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
For the Space Shuttle Discovery for the second day in a row, NASA officials had to delay the launch. Details live from Vic Ratner at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
We're going to have to call this the bad luck shuttle mission. Yesterday it was bad weather which forced a postponement. Today it was a computer glitch which forced NASA at the last minute to scrub the day's effort to launch the Discovery. Hugh Harris made the announcement from Launch Control.
Launch Director Bob Seek just announcing to the Lockheed Test Director and the NASA Test Director that we will scrub at this point. They have determined that the GPC number 5 is in a no-go condition. We will recycle for 24 hours.
The Space Shuttle has 5 computers. All 5 have to be working. One of them went on the fritz. They'll try again tomorrow. Vic Ratner, ABC News at the Kennedy Space Center.
Whenever Discovery is launched, the crew will deploy 3 communications satellites and during a 2-man spacewalk, attempt to jumpstart a satellite that has been in a useless orbit for the past 4 months. I'll have more after this.
CBS News, I'm Bill Lynch. For the third time in 4 days, the crew of Shuttle Discovery is strapped in their seats for liftoff from Cape Canaveral. But unless there's a break in the weather, this could be another frustrating day. Frank Motek of affiliate WINZ has the latest from the Kennedy Space Center.
The 5 Space Shuttle astronauts wearing rain jackets trudged their way to the Space Shuttle Discovery this morning as scattered showers swept over the Space Center.
The weather began to deteriorate about 1:30 this morning. A tropical wave moving our direction has brought with it quite a line of showers and thunderstorms. It's very rapidly moving, and our hope at the moment seems to be an area within the system that does not have too much activity.
NASA spokesman George Diller says the shuttle's team still has hope that the weather will clear in time.
cautiously optimistic is a good term. I wouldn't say that we're optimistic because we certainly can't launch if it's raining, and we can't launch if there's lightning within 5 nautical miles of the pad.
NASA officials say a decision to go or not to go will be made again in the final minutes of the countdown. They're now saying the shuttle has a 50-50 chance to lift off this morning. Frank Motek for CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
Will close at 7:39 Eastern Time. Now this.
Just a little bit early with you. This is Bill Zach.
Right, Bill.
Chit-chat before I let you have it.
1 minute, 15 seconds, and the liquid hydrogen tank is...
And we're just about a minute away from the launch. It looks like, as the old adage says, the third time is the charm. It looks like we're going to get Discovery up this morning after all, despite the concerns about the weather.
Up on the 1 minute point in our countdown.
We did have one problem earlier today with a ship in the area, the danger area, but that has been taken care of.
The system is armed, and the hydrogen igniters under the orbiter's engines have been armed. These devices ensure that any free hydrogen will not build up to cause a small explosion at engine ignition.
The shuttle is on the launch pad, and it's still dark in Florida at this point, but it's going to be a spectacular launch. We've never seen this shuttle go off practically in the nighttime, and it's going to be just beautiful.
And we have a go for auto sequence starts.
27 seconds now away from the launch of Discovery.
Auto sequence starts with the sequencer on the orbiter now controlling the final seconds up to launch.
16 seconds
15,
away.
14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. We have a go for main engine start, and we have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of STS-51I and the commercial deploy and repair mission. It has cleared the tower.
And boy, you can really tell everybody at the Mission Control Center at Kennedy Space Center in Florida is excited. The shuttle went off in a blast of orange fire and just a cloud of smoke. Now it's gone up into the clouds, and we can see it emerging from the clouds on the other side, like the sun coming up from the sky. It is just beautiful. A big orange glow up in the Florida sky as the shuttle takes off.
Throttling down at 65%.
And boy, are the NASA people happy to finally get the shuttle off. On the third attempt, the weather had been a concern. We sat here and waited. They put it in the countdown in a hold. We waited, and finally about 10 minutes ago, they got the go. They got a ship out of the danger area. They want everybody out of the area where the solid rocket boosters will come loose from the shuttle and drop into the ocean. We can't see the shuttle anymore. There's just a trail of smoke left behind in the sky, but it looks like it's finally on its way. This is going to be a really exciting mission. In 7 days, they will be trying to grab a satellite and fix it. This is the one that did not work when it was launched on the previous shuttle mission back in April. They're going to try a mechanical bypass operation, trying to bypass all the automatic sequencers, the controls on the shuttle, and try to start it. It was a spectacular launch this morning. Just beautiful. The Florida sky is still dark, but the shuttle was just a big orange ball of fire going up into the sky and appears to be doing just fine on its way to its orbit. This is going to be an 8-day mission with the 5-member crew. They'll be launching 3 satellites, the first of them later this afternoon, and that's become almost routine.
Downrange distance 16 nautical miles.
And we will have the solid rocket booster separation, but once again, the shuttle is off. Finally, the third time was the charm for NASA. Live from the Johnson Space Center, I'm Sue Davis, KTRH Houston.
CBS News, this is Charles Osgood. The third time was the charm for the 5 astronauts now heading into space aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery.
The window launch opportunity began at 6:55 a.m., and NASA said it wanted to launch Discovery at 7:05, but it was concerned about the weather, Bob. So when they counted down to T-minus 5 minutes, they began the countdown clock. Began it right away, concerned that bad weather might move in. So in essence, the Discovery did launch a little bit early than NASA had planned. We were expecting it to go up at 5 minutes after this hour. Instead, it's well on its way. It was launched approximately 3 minutes ago.
Dick, what did the weather look like when it finally made it off the ground?
We have a massive bad air that's in the area. Some rain showers, some thunder, even some lightning. But this swarm of disturbed air had pockets of clear weather, and that's exactly what they had shortly before 7 a.m. Eastern Time. They had some clear weather, and perhaps concerned that behind it was more bad weather, they put Discovery up before they had another scrub. We had a scrub on Saturday that was due to bad weather, and they canceled the launch on Sunday due to a computer failure.
The AP's Dick Uliano at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Things worked a lot better this time around in another case as well. That's the word from officials in West Virginia after yet another chemical leak at a
Hoften, single engine press to MECO. Roger, Houston, single engine press. Discovery now capable of reaching the normal main engine cutoff to orbit on only a single engine if that were to become necessary. 7 minutes, 10 seconds. Velocity 18,400 feet per second. Altitude 58 nautical miles. Downrange distance 478 nautical miles. 3 engines at 104%. Main engine cutoff time predicted at the pre-predicted number of 8 minutes, 28 seconds. Engines throttling down to maintain 3 Gs. Roger, we copy. Good, MECO. Discovery crew confirms normal main engine cutoff as predicted. Booster officer confirms normal main engines shut down. We copy, SEP. Separation of the external tank now confirmed. Velocity 26,000 feet per second. Discovery Houston, no almost one required. APU's off on time. Roger that. Verify that. Sounds good. With that status and mission control on the call up to the crew, a normal ascent profile confirmed. No OMS 1 required. Discovery be proceeding to its OMS 2. That is the final
off 10 minutes ago. SRB separation was clear. Main engine cutoff was clean. There was no OMS-1 burn required to put the orbiter into its orbit. There has been a normal ascent profile. It has been confirmed.
Shuttle Discovery begins its twice-delayed mission. Another toxic leak in West Virginia's Chemical Valley. A military coup is reported this morning in Nigeria. Good morning, this is Bill Lynch with the CBS World News Roundup.
We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition, and liftoff.
For the five-man crew of Shuttle Discovery, the third time was the charmer. Their launching on America's 20th space shuttle mission had been delayed on Saturday by weather and on Sunday by a bad computer. Today, iffy weather and a ship that strayed into the safety zone threatened a further postponement, but at 6:58 a.m. Eastern Time, Mission 51I was on its way. Bruce Hall was at the Florida Spaceport for this morning's touch-and-go liftoff.
It was an unusual launch because we lost the shuttle in a hurry in the clouds. It was a case where there really was just a few minutes break in the weather. It rained for about 4 hours before the launch, and within 2 or 3 minutes after the launch, the rain started coming again.
What's on the flight plan for this particular mission?
It's an exciting mission because it will include the release of 3 commercial communication satellites, and the thing that has gotten most of the attention, the attempt to rescue and repair an ailing dormant satellite.
What about the delay of 3 days? Is that going to have an effect on later missions?
It will delay all of the later missions by about 3 days, but it should not have a significant effect on the entire system.
Bruce Hall at the Kennedy Space Center. Japanese investigators today issued a preliminary report on the Japan Airlines 747 crash 2 weeks ago, in which 520 people died. While it did not specify the cause of the crash, the report said there were signs of metal fatigue in the rear bulkhead section. Aviation experts who reviewed the data said it supports speculation that cracks in that bulkhead allowed pressurized air to rush into the non-pressurized tail section, causing it to burst like a balloon and fall off.
CBS News, this is Judy Muller. The man who managed to lift off anyway.
4, 3, 2, 1, ignition, and liftoff.
This is Frank Motek of WINZ Miami at the Kennedy Space Center. The shuttle lit the morning sky and blasted off before an approaching thunderstorm could spoil another launch. The 5 astronauts had to wear rain jackets during the trip to the launch pad this morning, and they were looking up at bad weather for most of the morning until Mother Nature opened the sky to allow the launch. A final decision to blast off was made just minutes before launch because of the rapidly changing weather conditions. Shortly after the shuttle got into the sky, Mission Control reported all systems working, and the shuttle's engines fired the spaceplane into orbit.
The OMS burn was successful. We lost data from the spacecraft just as it was passing out of range of the tracking data relay satellite, but it was at the very end of the burn and everything looked good. Discovery now in orbit on Mission 51I.
Frank Motek for CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
2 hours after launch, the crew reported trouble with a shield that protects an onboard satellite from the sun. The crew speculated that a TV camera mounted on the shuttle's robot arm may have interfered with the operation of the shield on the Australian satellite in the cargo bay.
CBS News, this is Rob Armstrong.
Police and marchers clash in South Africa. El Salvador claims it's captured 3 cafe killers. West Germany's top spy is reported fired. Good morning. This is Bill Lynch with the CBS World News Roundup.
Crew is up and at work today. The shuttle's flight director says this will be a very light day for the crew, which he says is well-deserved after their busy day yesterday. Tropical storm Elena is brewing into a Gulf Coast hurricane. 16 South African blacks die in the latest violence. A new spy suspect caught in West Germany. Good morning. This is Bill Lynch with the CBS World News Roundup. Hurricane Elena blows and blows. Where she'll land, nobody knows. Up to 19 new riot deaths reported in South Africa, a prosecution setback in the Manila Aquino trial. Good morning. This is Bill Lynch with the CBS World News Roundup.
CBS News, I'm Bill Whitney. Astronauts have been awakened to prepare for the major business of their mission, the attempt to jumpstart the crippled Syncom communications satellite. A few hours from now, they'll begin a spacewalk to snare that satellite and bring it into Discovery's cargo bay for repairs.
Hundreds of thousands flee Elena's fury. The shuttle astronauts make a service call in space. California's Night Stalker gets a name. Good morning, everyone. This is Christopher Glenn with the CBS World News Roundup. Astronauts have been looking down on Elena once again today, relaying aerial TV pictures of the storm to the ground. But their eyes are turning to a different target now. Bruce Hall has the story from the Johnson Space Center in Houston.
It will be a busy day for the 5 astronauts. James Van Hoften and Bill Fisher may spend as much as 7 hours on a spacewalk trying to hotwire an $85 million frozen satellite that's electrical system has failed. Van Hoften will try to hold on to the 15,000-pound Syncom satellite, while Fisher, a medical doctor, performs electronic bypass surgery, rewiring the satellite so that it can be controlled from the ground. The astronauts had hoped to be able to complete this difficult operation within a day, but a malfunctioning mechanical arm on the shuttle means it may take 2 days to repair the satellite. Once it is repaired and released, it will take nearly 2 months to warm up the frozen satellite so the rockets can be fired and the satellite put back into use. However, officials say the chance of success is only 50%. Bruce Hall, CBS News at the Johnson Space Center.
CBS News, this is Eric Engberg. Van Hoften, known as Ox for his strength, stood this morning at the end of the space shuttle's robot arm and took hold of a dead communications satellite, trying to nurse it back to life. His spacewalking partner, Bill Fisher, and he will spend about 6 hours outside the shuttle working on the 7.5-ton derelict Syncom satellite. Mission Control listened as they huffed and puffed.
Go ahead and try to put this thing on the fly. Okay, it's on. Take me down. Got it, Fish. Roger that. Okay, we're bringing you down, Ox. Hoften has the grapple bar attached now and will be moved away from the satellite. He will then get out of the manipulator foot restraint, take it off and stow it. The arm will move back and then use the grapple fixture just attached to grab hold of the Syncom and maintain control of it while the crew goes into their salvage operations.
Opening sale prices are...
CBS News, this is Jackie Judd. Astronauts James Van Hoften and Bill Fisher have snared and stabilized a disabled satellite in the clutches of Discovery's extended robot arm. The operation next calls for Fisher to rewire the satellite. That would give ground controllers the ability to fire the satellite's rockets in late October and boost it into a functioning orbit. A second spacewalk tomorrow to finish the job may be necessary.
Pulled up next to a disabled satellite today and then parked to make a service call. 2 of the astronauts on board are now trying to wire around a problem in that communications satellite's electrical system, a difficult assignment that will take several hours. If the astronauts succeed, attempts will be made to bring the satellite back to life. The astronauts are working carefully because the satellite is still filled with volatile fuel left over from the failed attempt to put the satellite into a higher orbit.
CBS News, this is Frank Sedapani. Shuttle astronauts Bill Fisher and James Van Hoften are performing electronic surgery they hope will revive a crippled $85 million radio satellite. They had to wrestle with the spinning Syncom IV and then take precautions to keep its rocket fuel from exploding before starting the work. The job will require a second spacewalk tomorrow.
With Syncom back in orbit, and the space shuttle astronauts will have finished the job of bringing that crippled communications satellite to life. More from Sue Davis of station KTRH in Houston.
Astronauts Bill Fisher and Ox Van Hoften worked for more than 7 hours trying to breathe life into the ailing Syncom satellite. Fisher installed equipment to bypass Syncom's timing mechanism, and he reports the satellite looks good.
I had a good look at the UHF antenna over the D-split area as it pulled away, and it's in perfect condition. There's no dings or anything to indicate any damage to it, so I think it's going to be in good shape.
Okay, Fish, we copy. That's
It'll be 2 months before NASA learns if this repair job worked when ground controllers ordered the satellite's rocket motor to fire and send it into orbit. Sue Davis for CBS News at the Johnson Space Center.
From ABC News, I'm Bob Walker. Bill Fisher and Jim Van Houten have begun another spacewalk out in the open cargo bay. They are finishing work on a Syncom satellite they repaired yesterday, and they will relaunch it back out into space. From ABC News, I'm Bob Walker. Herrick is a busy place this morning, especially out in the cargo bay where some important repair work continues. ABC's Vic Ratner has the latest.
Day number 2 of the space repair effort is underway.
Okay, status, cup checklist.
Astronauts Bill Fisher and Jim Van Hoften are in their spacesuits going out to finish the job they started yesterday. With any luck, today's spacewalk will be shorter and easier than yesterday's, about 4.5 hours instead of 7 hours. Fisher and Van Hoften will fit a new cover on the satellite's rocket, get the new electronics they installed yesterday working, and then turn the satellite loose the old-fashioned way, by giving it a shove. A little while ago, the astronauts passed over Florida and reported seeing Hurricane Elena below. One of them called the storm impressive. I'm Vic Ratner, ABC News.
From ABC News, I'm John Grimes. Shuttle Discovery has carried out a major first, completing repairs on a dead satellite that hopefully can be restarted from the ground later this fall. Vic Ratner has details.
With the repairs complete, astronaut James Van Hoften turned loose the now fixed Syncom satellite with a final shove.
Van Hoften has given a push to the satellite.
Okay, it's a good push. Okay, one more push.
Van Hoften preparing to push the satellite again.
Looking good, Hans. It's a good steady spin and you're right on attitude.
Like some outer space weightlifter, Van Hoften just pushed the 7.5-ton satellite away from the space shuttle, leaving it in orbit by itself. It'll be a couple of months before we find out if the satellite's rocket motor can be slowly revived by the warmth of the sun. Vic Ratner, ABC News.
Local station KRLD, Dallas. KRLD is owned by Metro Media Radio and Television Incorporated and operates on a frequency of 1080 kilohertz. KRLD's entire broadcast schedule is a copyrighted original compilation work. No recording, retransmission, or other use may be made of KRLD's programming without the express prior written consent of Metro Media Radio and Television Incorporated.
CBS News, this is Paul Lockwood. The astronauts have gotten the wake-up call to begin the last full day of their mission, a day which will be taken up by stowing equipment and other housekeeping chores in advance of Tuesday's scheduled landing. On Sunday, James Van Hoften and William Fisher completed the in-orbit repair work on the bulky Syncom communication satellite and sent it on its way back to space.
CBS News, this is Frank Sedapanic. Crew did some house cleaning today, preparing for tomorrow's return from space. On the ground, NASA engineers gave a command that sent the newly repaired Syncom communication satellite spinning, boosting hopes that the weekend in-space service call will prove to be a complete success.
CBS News, this is Paul Lockwood.
CBS News, this is Charles Osgood. It's the Space Shuttle Discovery will break into the Earth's atmosphere and head for California's Edwards Air Force Base to end its week-long mission. The landing will occur about 9 minutes before sunup, so runway lights will be turned on to guide the astronauts home. During their mission, the astronauts launched 3 satellites into space and repaired one that was already there.
The Gulf Coast digs out from Elena's fury. A massive New Jersey fire takes many homes and jobs. Teachers prepare to go on strike in Chicago. Good morning. Bill Lynch with the CBS World News Roundup. This engine will be fired to begin its re-entry from a successful satellite delivery and repair mission. Michael Ambrosini of KNX is standing by at the Edwards Air Force Base landing site.
So far, conditions appear ripe for an on-time landing for Discovery at 9:15 Eastern Time. The air is clear, visibility 45 miles. The wind is running 10 knots, gusting to 18, but going the wrong direction for the original plan to have the craft land on runway 17. That's been changed to runway 23, where the wind will be with Discovery and not literally at cross purposes to the landing. Discovery will graze San Miguel Island west of California, cut diagonally across the Santa Barbara Channel, and cross California's coastline at Carpinteria. It'll be flying at Mach 4.2 and 109,000 feet altitude at that point. Touchdown speed will be 195 knots, and that's why those 18-mile-per-hour gusts have to be taken into account. As Discovery slows, it'll announce its own arrival with a familiar double sonic boom. A little after that, it'll describe a tight loop over the desert just east of Mojave and touchdown on Rogers Dry Lake Bed. Michael Ambrosini for CBS News, Edwards Air Force Base.
CBS News, this is Charles Osgood. It is just before sunrise in California, and two things are about to appear in the sky above Edwards Air Force Base. One is the sun on the way up. The other is the Space Shuttle Discovery on the way down, heading in for a landing that will end its successful week-long mission. Standing by is Michael Ambrosini of CBS station KNX. What's happening, Michael?
Well, Charles, as you say, the landing of the shuttle is going to be coincident with the sunrise here. The weather conditions are pretty good. We have 45-mile visibility, we're told, and the wind is running 18 knots. That's not too bad, actually, if it's running with the shuttle. If it's running at crossways to the shuttle across the landing strip, that can be bad. However, they have changed to landing strip 2-3, which puts the shuttle on the same course as the wind, and so it seems like we'll have a good, smooth landing.
Why the timing of this landing before sunrise, Michael?
Well, I really don't know, Charles. I would imagine that it has to do with atmospheric conditions and also with the wind out here. The wind is gusting, and I suppose that they try to minimize that. Perhaps around dawn it begins to gust a little stronger.
Thank you. Michael Ambrosini at Edwards Air Force Base, where Discovery is scheduled to land just a few minutes from now. The crew succeeded in repairing a lifeless satellite and launched 3 others into orbit. The aftermath of Hurricane Elena after this.
I'm Sam Litzinger. The landing of Space Shuttle Discovery. The ship and the astronauts have been up there for a week, and now it's time to come home. Touchdown at Edwards Air Force Base in California is just a couple of minutes away. It's just before dawn, the runway lights are on, and reporter Steve Futterman has one of the best seats in the house. Steve, set the stage for us. What's going on now?
Well, Sam, here at Edwards Air Force Base, it's just before dawn's early light. The shuttle Discovery is now on its way back to Earth. It's just come over Edwards Air Force Base. We just heard that now familiar double sonic boom, which announces Discovery's arrival. So far, everything has gone smoothly for the end of this week-long mission. Just around an hour ago, Discovery began its deorbit burn, beginning its descent into the Earth's atmosphere. And just around 10 minutes ago, it crossed over California just before Santa Barbara. This by now has become almost routine, a shuttle landing, but it bears repeating that Discovery is powerless as it comes back to Earth. It's nothing more than a huge glider. It has only one chance to make a successful landing. Right now we can see Discovery coming down thanks to those powerful Navy cameras on board the jets that accompany Discovery as it comes back to Earth. It comes down very gradually. Before it comes down, the nose will very rapidly come up, and the landing gears, both the front and tail, will touch down. First the rear gears, and then the nose slowly comes down, and then the front gears will touch. And right now we see Discovery. When you first see it, it looks like just a white speck in the sky, although today it's a bit more difficult to see because it is before sunrise. And then gradually it becomes larger and larger. You can begin to make out the tail of Discovery, and then it almost looks like the shuttle. Then you can finally see the white tiles as it comes down. Right now, Discovery is making its final loop over Edwards Air Force Base. Captain Joe Engel, Commander Joe Engel, I should say, and Commander and you can see it coming straight towards runway 23, runway 23. NASA officials had to make a last-minute change because of gusty winds, but everything else appears to be okay. Visibility very high, and now the shuttle, as I said, becoming more distinct We can now see the wings. We can now see the tail section. We can now see what you would call the fuselage of this space plane, although it is a glider.
Steve, I understand they had scheduled this landing for a couple of minutes earlier and then changed it at the last minute. How come?
Well, originally it should have landed around 8 minutes ago, but they wanted to get all the daylight possible. It is just before sunrise here, so they ordered Discovery's crew to perform a burn that would lift it into a higher orbit by around 10 miles. That gave them an extra 8 minutes. And now it's about to come down just over the Edwards Air Force Base now. The final approach, and I would say a few seconds now, we're about to see the landing gear come down. The landing gear is down, and now Discovery about to touch down. The rear wheels will hit first. We'll see a cloud of dust as it touches down. Any moment now, just a few feet. The rear wheels are about to touch down. They're hovering like a foot above runway 23, and now they have touched down. And now the nose of the Discovery gradually comes down. It looks like a perfect landing. One more foot, and now Discovery has landed. The end of this week-long mission. The mission that was very successful. Discovery's crew launched 3 communication satellites and repaired a 4th, taking 2 dangerous spacewalks to repair that 4th satellite, which had already been put into orbit. So another successful end. This the end of America's 20th space shuttle mission. Just like the rest, a picture-perfect landing.
Steve, can we talk about some of the successes of this mission? You mentioned a satellite repair job and then 3 successful satellite deployments. Is NASA happy?
Very happy. This was one of the most trouble-free flights once it finally got off the ground. NASA officials are extremely pleased that really no problems cropped up during this flight, and it's a very nice end. Discovery will take sort of a respite for a while. It will not go back into space until next year. The next space shuttle mission will be the debut performance of Atlantis.
All right, Steve, so Space Shuttle Discovery is home, safe and sound. Now they have to get ready for the next mission. With Steve Futterman, I'm Sam Litzinger. This has been a live special report from AP Network News.
Comes home. Hurricane Elena dies out, and cleanup begins on Gulf Coast. Striking black miners in South Africa deported to homelands. With Mutual News, I'm Frank Gentry. Just minutes ago, the Space Shuttle Discovery touched down at Edwards Air Force Base, California. Mutual's Jim Slade was monitoring from Washington.
Discovery touched down about 17 minutes after the hour at a precise 195 knots, the speed predicted several hours ago when the landing was plotted. The ship completed 7 days, 2 hours, 18 minutes in flight, flew 2,536,997 nautical miles, launched 3 satellites, and rescued a 4th. They're very happy.
The astronauts say they saved an $85 million investment by hot wiring a satellite put into orbit last April. It had refused to function properly.